What's up, guys? So I know normally my content is focused on this here, IWI Caramel. I know that's what most of my views so far have been on recently, and I know that's what you guys have kind of come to expect at this point. Something like 4 videos on the channel are about the caramel. And a couple of those are, I believe, getting towards 1,000 views, which is really cool. I want to thank you all. If any of you happen to watch this, that's really cool. 1,000 views, I know, sounds crazy. But I want to go ahead and say that all the weapons have been checked for ammo, and all the ammo shown in this video is live, but will continue to be kept separate from the firearms. So over the last 6 to 8 months, my philosophy has gone from something like this, the Daniel Defense Mark 18, where as you can see, I've cannibalized all my parts for other firearms builds, to something a little bit more like the Scorpion, which is a Generation 2 CZ Scorpion pistol. The 3rd generation is out, and they have lightened these things up a ton. So if you see these Gen 2s, I'd say hold off, get a Gen 3. You could tell by the sort of waffling around the magwell and some other changes, but anyway, my philosophy's gone from something like an intermediate, like 5.56 here, which is a little bit more expensive, to more along the lines of 9mm and your 10mm. And I know you guys can see this little 5.7 sitting here. We'll get to him. And this 300 blackout, that's here to help get the point of suppression across. But so my philosophy started changing when I began to consider that you're more likely to have something like this. This is a CZ75B retro model, and I actually just recently picked this up, probably the second newest firearm. Yeah, second newest firearm. Newest is the Caramel here. So every day you're going to carry something like this or similar to this. You're going to be carrying a handgun of sorts, typically a 9mm like this retro, a 40 cal, a 45 like a 1911, or a 10mm, depending, maybe on where you live or what you do. You could be a full-time trapper or something, maybe 10mm would be better. I don't know. Point being, your handgun cartridges, at least talking towards the 9, the 40, and the 45, are typically going to be cheaper than your 300 blackout and your 5.56 rounds. And for somebody who's concerned about cost, that's going to be a big deal when you're talking about, potentially 10, 9, 8, even in some cases up to 15-cent difference in bullet pricing, depending, of course, on what you're buying. You can buy cheap range ammo, for handgun and rifle. Rifle rounds are typically going to come in a 20-round box, like these S&B 300 Blackout Subsonics, and pistol rounds are typically going to come in 50 or 100 round packages, and both are going to be about the $20 mark for your standard run-of-the-mill stuff. This is not standard run-of-the-mill. This is actually subsonic ammo, and even though that's considered more of the training style of 300 Blackout, it's still really expensive. So cost is going to be your number one factor in why pistol cartridges are better than rifle cartridges. Now, let's talk a little bit about training in that, yes, 5.56 is a very light recoiling, fairly reliable, long service history round It's been around since like the 50s, and I mean, there's really not much to say about it. If you don't know 5.56 at this point, I mean, are you into guns? 9mm has been around longer. I'm not exactly sure how long. I know it was used in World War One, so it had to come out before then. But when it comes to the forgotten part of the weapon history, I am not Ian McCollum. The 5.7 is a new kid on the block from the 90s, and the 10mm is the 80s, I believe, along with the 40 caliber. I believe that was the Miami-Dade shooting where they decided that 9mm wasn't gonna quite punch what the FBI needed it to, and 10mm came out. 10mm turned out to be too much, so the 40 cal came out. So that's a little bit of history there. But as far as tactics go, generally, your rifle tactics can transfer to PCC, pistol caliber carbine tactics. And that's quite a big deal. Especially when you talk about training, you talk about, 10, 15 cents a round. That starts to add up when you're on ammo box number 3 or ammo box number 4, right? So in training, your PCCs can be a lot cheaper, a lot easier to feed, especially when traveling out of state, or if you live somewhere weird, I don't know, provinces, I guess. I don't know what's going on in Canada. I'm sorry that Trudeau exists. So capacity, for the most part, you're going to have access to your standard, run-of-the-mill 30-round magazines. It's kind of the go-to for everything. The aluminum mag is going to be, of course, heavier than this polymer magazine. I should have grabbed a PMag. In fact, the PMag still has significant weight over this little plastic Scorpion magazine. And when you're saving weight, not only with your ammunition being lighter due to smaller powder loads, heavier grain bullets, this is 115 versus 55 grains for the bullet tip, but you have a lighter powder load and a smaller casing. Combine that with a lighter and smaller magazine and a typically, again, this is a Gen 2, thanks CZ for the Gen 3, a lighter, typically firearm, you get a easier to run system that can be just as, if not more reliable than something like this direct impingement Mark 18, whereas the Scorpion here is just a direct blowback. So along with that, your carbine magazines share the same caliber as the handgun you carry, which means reloading your mags is going to be that much easier. You no longer have to worry about 5.56 and 9mm. You have to worry about 9mm and more 9mm. So, ammo's cheaper, guns can be more reliable, guns can be smaller, guns can be lighter, they can be more compact, more discreet. You can get rifles, you can get pistols, long barrels, short barrels, upside down barrels, long stroke, short stroke, gas pistons, direct blowbacks, roller delayed if you get into the MP5 game. And I think I already said direct blowback, that's my bad. Your 20 round magazines, wow, that's a reach. Your 20 round magazines are also pretty standard for both firearms. In the case of the CZs, I think they're better. They are a translucent, smoky grayish black here. You can see through these, whereas these PMags you cannot. Again, going with the lighter thing, this is definitely lighter than this. It's smaller, which means more magazines, more ammo, more compatibility, easier to train with, easier to maneuver with, easier to, honestly, I think, in my opinion, understand, depending on the platform that you get. Not really looking at you, Scorpion. I think there's fantastic platforms out there. You know, we like to talk about our Mark 18s. We like to talk about, you know, the SIG MCXs and all these other firearms that, you know, are in the 5.56 and the 300 blackout world that have really taken over. And then a lot of people seem to, especially recently, have forgotten that there is a pistol version of the MCX called the MPX that fires 9mm. High point, I know a lot of people are going to have some negative opinions and some connotations with high point. Yes, they're cheap. Yes, they're made out of pot metal. But if you want to get something that can pack a real punch at a very cheap price for home defense, I mean, you can't go wrong with their carbines. I actually want to get a 10mm carbine, and for no other reason than it's a 10mm high point carbine. You can get, I believe it's 12 rounds in a extended magazine. So 12 or 15 rounds of 10mm in a firearm that costs less than a Glock, that I can also suppress and also throw on an optic. And if I really need to push out for more range, and again, we'll talk about loadings here in a second. If I really want to push a range, you know, we can start going, well, from 9mm, we can start talking this little 10mm here. And then, you know, you're pushing out, I forget what it is, maybe 400, 300 feet per second faster than that 9mm. And then we can start talking about the Buffalo bore loadings, which are plus P+, which for those who aren't quite into firearms yet, it means increased pressure with more increased pressure. So it's like a plus P self-defense round jacked up to, well, it's not really jacked up to 11, it's jacked up to like 15. So especially you get those loadings, you can get entire copper jacket bullets for 9 and 10. You know, I might grab at both of these or one or the other, but really it doesn't matter. For the most part, with your handgun rounds, you can get solid copper slugs, you can get solid lead slugs, you can get hunting rounds, you can get self-defense rounds, training rounds, light armor penetration, depending on state. And then especially you get into something weird like this 5.7, which yes is going to probably cost a little bit more than this, but you can get into something like a CMMG Banshee and a Ruger 5.7 at a more reasonable price than you would think, especially if you look at the used market or you look at places like Gunbroker or gun shows. You can find things at or below MSRP. So the 5.7, especially if you can find the really good stuff from FN, the green tips and whatnot, green tip being the military and police exclusive hollow point. There's a couple of aftermarket offerings for the 5.7 as well. So generally just look around. If you're investigating a new caliber or platform, like I already said, want a 10mm high point carbine, but I'm also looking at picking up a Kel-Tec Sub 2000 and maybe an MPX at some point. You know, obviously we can talk about the legendary MP5, MP5K. We can get those as the SP5 and SP5K respectively. There's also quite a few options from BNT. Just giving a look at this here. But there are quite a few diverse options. So BNT, HK, CZ here, Zenith, Keltec, Smith & Wesson has their knockoff sub 2000 now. I can't remember what it's called to save my life, but there is plenty of options. The market is awash with different guns, and you can still mount lights, lasers, grips, depending. I say grips depending because you're going to have to SBR one of these things, but that's for another video. I'm already running this into, oh gosh, this says the 16-minute mark, and it's just a long ramble. So if I have to sum this up, I would say rifle rounds, your 5.56, your 300 blackout, your 308, your 7.62x39, your 5.45, and all of your other, you know, your hunting rounds, your 6.5 Creedmoor, your 6.5 Grendel, your 4.16 Barrett, and your 50 cal obviously cannot be replaced by something like this 9mm, this 10mm, or this 5.7. But I think that the average American civilian gets too much military style content and not enough police or practical style content, wherein people talk about, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to carry something like this on a daily basis, right? You're not going to have a Mark 18 with a sling, you know, grips, lights, lasers. You're not going to have this on you. And I promise you, losing something like a $1,500 Daniel to somebody who broke into your car is going to hurt a lot less than something like this $900 CZ Scorpion. And I think that's part of it at the end of the day. If you're smart and you keep a rifle or AR pistol style firearm in your vehicle, you can keep something smaller, cheaper, lighter, and quicker with more ammo in your vehicle than something that's bigger, heavier, and then you get into, you know, you're risking over penetration, you're risking hitting other people. This 20 round mag is slightly smaller, about the same size as the 20 round mag for the AR. I show the back, but where it really matters is when you realize that you can almost fit two of these Scorpion mags on top of this one 5.56 P mag. And you can always load with something like this 20 round, and then if something happens and there's a serious threat, you can swap to a 30 round like this. Now you can do the same for your 5.56, but of course you're going to have this wider, more pronounced, heavier, harder to maneuver magazine. Not to mention many firearms like Palmetto State Armory's AKV do use these CZ Scorpion mags. Magpul makes their own copy, and they're coming down in price, whereas AR mags have stayed steady. Particularly P mags, I typically find them between $20 to $28 is where you're going to find most of your factory new P mags. And these are still around the $30 mark, but I think they're going to keep coming down, and you'll see them become cheaper. Obviously, your MPX magazines are going to be more expensive. But generally, check out what's available on the market. Check out what's near you. I feel that civilians should take more after police when it comes to selecting firearms for daily carry or prepping for local collapse sort of situations where, you may have a large hurricane come through, especially if you're in the south like me. We actually have some kind of warning or something. The tornado starts with an I can't pronounce it to save my life. We have a tornado coming through, and if power were to go out, if suddenly there was no more food and flash flooding, I think for most situations where you might have to protect yourself, this is going to be a little bit smarter than this, because you have a larger margin of error for mistake with something like this than like this, simply due to the shape of the projectile and the amount of powder that is pushing this bullet downrange. You have something going 2,000 feet per second. You have something going, I don't even know what 9mm travels, like 14, 15, I think. Not to mention, it's a fatter projectile that's less aerodynamic. It's going to stop faster. And really, according to FBI tests, you only need about 12 inches of penetration, which most 9mm rounds are more than capable of. You can step into 40, 45, and then of course your 10 mils, or you can go into some weird things. We have the 5.7. There's the 4.6 by 30, which I believe CMMG makes their Banshee in, but good luck finding the ammo. And other rounds like 7.62 by 25 Tokarev are available, and again, depending, at reasonable prices, versus something where you fire this 5.56 round and this is going into the next room. If this hits something, it may tumble and stop in the drywall or the insulation or wood. This has a chance of making it through that wall and into the next person's bedroom. So I think for most people in a general use situation, this paired with that make more sense than this paired with this. So let me know what you guys think. I know this was a really long video, and I am sorry that I rambled for so long. Let me know what you guys think. I know what I think. I just gave you my opinion over the last 23 minutes. And I do want to have some debate, so if anybody has any questions, concerns, comments, or anything of note to say, please leave it down in the description, and I will see you guys next time.